And we've mentioned it a million times. We'll get to it now. We don't want to sensationalize this imaginary discussion, but I think we can't avoid it. Our friend Bill Livingston wrote about it. People have talked about it. In 2015, what will the quarterback situation be? This is assuming, and we don't know this, that Braxton Miller is back and healthy. It's a long enough recovery time that I think that it's certainly possible that he's not doing much until camp next year, that you really are going to have some uncertainty. But, Ari, if Braxton Miller is back and is physically ready to play, is there any question in your mind that he should be the starting quarterback, or is there something JT Barrett could do or has already done to
go to the next
who
ball is what he was last year? And that's not saying he's, we can't give him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to improve dramatically because he's not throwing. But if he could be the player that he was last year, the guy that won the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year, I personally have a hard time going against that. Now, we have a comment about the dilemma that can create, and we'll get to it. But right now, I just believe that Braxton Miller, if he was on this team right now, they'd be undefeated and one of the favorites to go to the next division.
He's making good decisions. He's getting the ball out. He's distributing. He's not throwing picks lately. Do you think if Braxton Miller was the quarterback right now, that most of those things would be happening with him too? Or are there things that JT Barrett is doing better than Braxton Miller would be doing?
I think that there's this weird obsession with Ohio State fans because it's been so long since they've had a player like JT at quarterback, dating back to, Troy Smith was the perfect example of it in 2006 of a precision. Ball, very, I think JT might be able to be, but I think for whatever reason, Ohio State fans are sick of the Terrell Pryor model, where it's a very freakishly good athlete who can run all over the place and do those things, but might not look pretty throwing the ball. And I think JT's looked pretty good throwing it with form and everything. And I think there's a foundation there of if we just keep at it, this guy doesn't turn it over much. He has great form throwing it. He seems to make a good decision maker. If we continue to roll with him, then maybe this will manifest into a Troy Smith type of offense. And I think people miss that. But at the same time, first of all, throwing out a guy that can win any game for you. Because I'm not sure JT can do that yet. Maybe he will next year. Maybe he will in the future. But I think people just are tired of the athlete at quarterback. I think they just want a real quarterback. But that doesn't mean it's better for what Ohio State wants to do.
Again, all of this, I don't think any of this is a criticism of JT Barrett or a criticism of Braxton Miller. No. If you have two good quarterbacks, what a great problem to have. It is interesting to think about that we live in a football world where the guy who won
Navy longer period
leave his college because they were going to put in the next guy. At NC State, they had Russell Wilson and Mike Glennon. Both of them are now starting quarterbacks in the NFL, but Russell Wilson moved on because they sort of were ready for the next guy. So, you never know 100% for sure how things are going to shake out. From what you've seen of JT this year, Bill, does he seem like a guy that you think would make a very good case to be the quarterback in 2015 no matter what?
I think JT's been very good. I think better than, I would say, most people anticipated after looking pretty shaky against Navy and
shirt fresh.
A long period.
Continues at the pace that he's at. We could be talking about a guy who finishes with 40 touchdown passes this year.
Yeah, his stats are crazy right now.
And if that, it's hard to overlook that. And I don't envy Urban Meyer for having to make a decision between a healthy Braxton Miller and JT Barrett. I think that JT can do more this season to put himself more in the conversation. I think Urban Meyer is going to feel some kind of loyalty to Braxton Miller and feel like Braxton Miller is going to at least get a shot to become the quarterback of this team again if he's healthy.
Okay. Rapid fire. First of all, it's very
shirt fresh
for a long game almost, and his recovery period is going to probably take him into fall camp. So I think that it's almost a long shot that he'll be completely ready, and I think JT's going to get all the reps in the spring, and that creates another aspect to it. But here's kind of what I was talking about a little bit earlier. and I want to bring in a fan comment from Original or Orange Brown fan. So he's seen a lot of great quarterback play over the years. So he said, we have seen an article early from this newspaper, which I wrote, that quoted Meyer saying Miller was the quarterback next year. Mm-hmm. And I think at that point, what else is he going to say? Of course, that you just
might
again playing, if he keeps maturing, that's going to be a real issue. He has already established himself as a better passer, which I think is an interesting point of view and a very common point of view. Is he a better passer? I don't know if that's the case. But
I think Braxton probably has a better arm.
A bigger arm.
I think it looks nicer. I mean, but the assertion that JT is already a better passer than somebody who's been doing it for 3 years, I think is a little bit flawed, and I don't know why everybody thinks that, but they do. As he continues, the wide receivers and tight ends, despite their love for Miller, are going to want to be with Barrett more because of the chemistry they've built. Miller only threw for 2,000 yards last season, not exactly eye-popping numbers. But here's the ongoing dilemma. It's very longer period. Barrett lose a productive season in the critical portion of his development, but all the future top QBs that Ohio State's now recruiting are negatively affected by the succession chain. How is this issue resolved if they go back to Miller, based on just the reaction that it might make not only for the team but for the guys we're trying to bring in?
I don't know that it changes that much, because if Braxton Miller was healthy, the chain is very interesting. I think the chain is real. I mean, you're the recruiting guy. The chain is real. We can't pretend that playing time and how many years you're going to get to play doesn't affect quarterback recruits. But the plan would have been Braxton Miller as the starter this year, JT Barrett sitting for a second year as a redshirt freshman. You wrote in our starting job with potentially the chance to start for 3 years, which is all you can ask for. He would have started as a third-year player, a redshirt sophomore, a fourth-year player, and a fifth-year player if he stuck around. What has changed is that you've just changed the order of that. So JT Barrett's getting his year now. Braxton Miller would come back next year, and JT Barrett would still have 2 more years after Braxton, and in the end have 3 years as the starter. And I don't think that doesn't affect Joey Burrow. It doesn't affect Torrance Gibson. It doesn't affect Danny Clark. All that's the same.
I think it does for this reason. Now, I know that the actual amount of years that you just Barrett was not what he is right now, and they didn't consider him a real. I think the thought process was Torrance Gibson was going to come in and start. So now
you thought that.
I mean, I think that. I mean, I don't know. I think that without seeing JT Barrett perform, Ohio State now has to answer for that player. Where I think a top prospect is going to come in and say, well, Braxton's going to be a senior. The other kid hasn't played yet either. Mm-hmm. I can compete. Now that we've seen that JT Barrett is on pace for 40 touchdowns and is in the conversation and people think he's a better passer than Miller, now you have to explain to guys like Torrance Gibson, well, no matter what happens next year, it looks like JT